This is May 2016,
Yes.
and we're delighted to have here Lauchlan MacLean, who's an instantly recognised figure in Watsonian circles. He regularly attends the Watsonian AGMs, and appropriately for someone who saw service life in the Second World War, he comes to all the school remembrance services. His association with the school goes back a long, long way.
Indeed.
Now, Lauchlan is 90 at the moment,
Yes.
and your first contact with Watsons was when, Lauchlan?
October 1934.
Yes.
The term started in October 1934.
Yes.
And I joined with a few others, including one Ronnie MacLean, who came from Mull,
Yes.
one of three brothers. I have a funny feeling we sat in alphabetical order in Miss Rattray's class.
Yes.
I know I sat beside Ronnie MacLean and I sat behind Gilbert Kennedy. Neither Ronnie and myself had done joined up writing, and Miss Rattray was very patient with us and did a lot to encourage us. Somehow or other during the term, Miss Rattray went elsewhere, I think probably the elementary department or the preparatory, and we had Miss Davidson as our teacher. Mr. Cardigan in the next year, we were in one middle junior, which was the lowest academical standard at that time, 1, 2 and 3. Although saying that, Peter Blackhall, who was in the class, was school captain 42-43, so we did quite well for one middle junior.
Oh, yes.
In the qualifying class we had Mr. Budge, who had been, I think, in Africa, and he had 3 jars on the windowsill with snakes in them, in some kind of preservative fluid. He was also in charge of the film club, which was quite an interesting thing, because we met in the lecture room and had talks and sometimes slideshows in different parts of the world. And we had site visits to the museum, the zoo, the university apiary, and the corporation cleansing department,
Yes.
which was very interesting for us. My father was a teacher at the school. He was also a housemaster of Lauchlan, and the first week or two at the school we were allocated to different houses, and I wasn't allocated to Lauchlan, but within about a week I had changed to Lauchlan, which was my...
Quite rightly.
Yes. One term or one day, I think just about the whole of the junior school went to the Playhouse Cinema by tramcar to see Tom Sawyer.
Yeah.
There were pupils from all the schools in Edinburgh, and we went by trams. I can remember we stopped off at Boroughmuir Head and picked up Boroughmuir pupils and Gillespies and all sorts of it. Anyway, that was an interesting item for us. We had Miss Park for gym, and occasionally she would produce a wind-up gramophone, and we would learn to dance. I think it was the polka. I can still do a polka pretty well, and I think the other one was probably the Gay Gordons, but I can remember winding up the gramophone. We had the class had a very bad attack of mumps about the time King George V died. That would be 1935, I think. Anyway, and then later on, I went into the secondary department, and there was a severe outbreak of verruca warts in the swimming pond in Ballard. It was traced to the swimming pond and reputedly caused by the Italian workmen who had laid or made the swimming pond with terrazzo. They were working in their bare feet, and the story was that the warts came off their feet onto the... I don't know how true that was or not. The baths were closed for refurbishment anyway. In the summer term before the war, that was summer 1939, a chap called Wolf Ziegel came to the class. He was a refugee from Germany.
Yes.
He had a brother, I think, Peter, who was interned when the Italians came into the war. He was interned because he wasn't a British subject.
Yes.
And another strange thing was a fellow called Nathan. The family name was Nathan. They changed their name to Haywood just before the war. I don't know for what reason, but that sticks in my mind.
Yes.
And a new head of the physical training department was appointed in 1938, I think, probably, Captain Honeyman. He was a Watsonian, but he felt the school wasn't fit enough, and we did 10 minutes jerks, physical training, every day in the quad, in the playground. If it was a very wet day, we did it in the corridors, and I think he had a group of senior pupils helping him to do it, but that kept us going anyway.
Yes.
Now, let's see. I'll discuss the war later on, but during the war, Freddie Holmes organised a series of concerts in the Easter term. Pupils took part, teachers took part. Some of the pupils, like John Lorraine, played the trumpet, and Rudolph Essex sang, a good singer, and Mr. Gray, the Latin teacher, he played the violin, and I think one or two other teachers played violins, and I have a funny feeling somebody played a cello, but I just can't recall that exactly. There was a small charge made for the entrance, and that went to a charity. One of the names of the concert was called Easter Caravan. I can't remember the names of the other ones. When George Robertson, who was the headmaster, retired in July 1943, some of us borrowed 2 stop clocks from the science department, and we ran a sweepstake on how long he would speak for. It was quite a popular sweepstake. In the 4th year, Freddie Lemon, the swimming teacher, encouraged us to take our bronze medallion life-saving certificates, and most of us did. And in the 5th year, a few of us went on to take our silver medal. One of the tests we had to do for the silver medal was to swim 2 or 3 lengths of the pond with clothing on, and then we had to dive to the bottom of the pond and pick up a dummy. The dummy was called George. I don't know if that was after Dr. Robertson. I'd like to say. Most of the teachers smoked in these days, and I think a lot of it was a pipe. And if you went past any teacher, I can remember Mr. Cardigan, we had him in the 4 Middle Junior, and he reeked of tobacco smoke, and most of the teachers did. And if you went past the staff room and the door was open, you could hardly see the other side for a cloud of smoke. But I got my second colours for rugby and cricket, and I think that just about covers my school life. I'll come on to the war in a minute.
Yes, of course,
Now, some little anecdotes about the teachers. In the first year we had a man called Nunky Shaw. He was just about finished his teaching career, and he used to talk a wee taste of the taws. He didn't often use the strap, but when he did produce it, it was like a strap from a railway carriage window.
Oh, I remember
Very
that,
soft, and he had it kept rolled up, tied with a blue ribbon.
Blue ribbon.
We had Mr. Gray for Latin, and one day before the period started, some of us, I don't know who was responsible, into his drawer and opened his drawer, cut his strap up into small bits, which we left in his drawer. And he eventually opened the drawer and saw what had happened and made no comment, but just picked up the bits and pushed them into the wastepaper basket. He went across to his cupboard and produced another strap.
One. Oh, he had a reserve there.
That was quite funny.
What sort of offences? What sort of offences deserved the strap?
Talking, misbehaving, I think. Mr. Shanks, who taught Latin, he was pretty cruel. He had he had a system of marking irregular, with a book of grammar, Latin grammar, with pages and pages of irregular verbs. And before the term started, we went through these irregular verbs and marked them with a little circle, one circle or two circles. And we did Latin every day, I think. He would say, right, we'll do page such and such, the one circles, and now and again the two circles, and then periodically he would test us on irregular verbs, not the ones you had done in 2 or 3 days, but might be ones weeks before. And he used to get very annoyed and strap us for some of that.
Oh, yeah.
And I think it's difficult to see why they got this. Talking, I think, was one of the things. After being told to stop,
yes.
But I got the strap a few times. Yes. In the 5th year, we had Mr. Barclay for physics. We sat on high stools round big tables, and he had an expression he used quite a lot. For example, now for example, if you did such and such a thing, and now for example. So now and again we would have a wee sweepstake round the table on how often we very often it's a double period we had. Yeah. One very hot summer day, the windows were all wide open, and we were in Baldy Cooper's class. And he taught history, and his room was the last room on the top corridor at the gymnasium end of the corridor. And he often went out and left us for a wee 10 minutes. I think he went along for a cigarette or something, I don't know what. He disappeared and left us in a row anyway. We were quite capable. But anyway, this particular day, we all stood up and lifted our desks about a foot off the floor. And I think it was Dougie Miller who said 1, 2, and on 3 we dropped all the desks together. Tremendous clatter. Now his room was above Billy Williams, who taught maths, room 16. And Billy was up the stair like a shot. Stand up the fella that said 3. Well, I can't remember if we all stood up or if we all sat still. Oh, yeah. Whatever happened, Billy just turned and went away, and that was the end of that. I think that's about all I can say. Well, wait a minute, let's see. About 12 of us did Lower Latin. Now, during the war, of course, and Paulin took us for Latin. Now, one of his wartime duties was to be in charge of the national savings, school national savings. And you could buy a savings stamp for tuppence halfpenny. I'm talking now in modern money, about tuppence halfpenny. And once you collected enough stamps, 75 pence worth, you took them along to Pip, and he gave you a savings certificate, and that was it. Now, he was quite a character, came from Jedburgh, he was very border orientated, and one particular day, he came into the class and 4 boys with him, 4 were from the class, and I don't know what they had done, but he said, I'll deal with you later. Anyway, we were sitting there, and Ted, the janitor, came in. Now, in these days, the janitors wore tailcoats. Now, there was a man, James Colley, and he had a small piece of tartan cloth on his chair at his desk. Now, the story was he had been wounded, and he had in his backside, and I don't know how true that was, but now I travelled by train to the Waverley station, and we went up the steps, and got on the same tram every morning, of course, and a fellow called Sandy Mackenzie, who taught Latin and Greek, he was on the tram, and he was one of the compilers of the Scotsman crossword. He did the Wednesday puzzle and the Saturday puzzle, and he spent all the time between the Waverley steps, and he was on the tram when he got on the Waverley steps, all the time between the Waverley steps and Church Hill, filling in crossword grids. And I was never in his class, but I understand he occasionally would send pupils along to the library to check quotations and stuff which he used. Eventually he got pushed from the Scotsman because the puzzles were too complicated.
Oh, yes.
A lot of correspondence in the Scotsman. There was another fellow who taught English called Naismith, J.B. Naismith. He was called Coddy Naismith. The reason being he came from Kirkcaldy.
Oh, yes, yes.
Now, he used to write little comic poems, 6 or 7 lines just, and he sent them to Punch, a magazine called Punch, which was going in these days. And he was so well respected by the Punch people that his initials appeared after the poems. Normally they were just anonymous, but he was well in with it, and GBN appeared under the.
Yes.
So he got a small amount of money, I think, for these. And I think that's about all I can tell you about teachers. Now let's come on to the war.
Yes, yes.
Well, when the war started, the air raid shelters weren't ready, and we didn't start until the middle of October. Now, the girls from George Square had been evacuated or decamped from George Square to Watson's College in Collington Road, and we shared shifts. We worked in the morning shift from 8:30 till 12:30, and an afternoon shift from 1 o'clock to 1 o'clock to 5 o'clock. It was difficult in the darkness because there was no blackouts on the windows, and the school finished early. I can't remember what time it finished, but we had to work on a Saturday morning to make up for the time we didn't in the evenings. A great number of pianos from the school, from George Square, I think, were stored under the gallery, and people could play them. There were just, it must have been 20 or 30 at least, pianos under. I can always remember that. There were no school dinners, of course, and we had to carry our gas mask with us. And the swimming baths were closed. They had been refurbished, but they were never opened because the war had come on. The air raid shelters were very wet. There was water, they had duck boards on them, but they were very, very wet. And we seldom, well, we went out for, I think, one practice a term into the. I don't ever recall going out in an actual air raid. Strangely enough, the day the school opened, I think after, in the middle of October, there was an air raid in the afternoon, but the sirens didn't go off.
Oh, right, so you noticed that,
We were in the morning shift at that time anyway.
quite a few of the teachers have been called up or who got the sack, and the classes were smaller. Quite a few boys went elsewhere. Ronnie MacLean went to Glenalmond, and one or two others, I don't know where they went. And we had a boy in our class who came from Stewart's. He was and shifted across. Because the 4th and 5th years had important exams, we had to sometimes, if you were in the morning shift, you had to do classes in the afternoon, and the girls the same, of course. And to avoid any problems, draft screens were put up in the middle of the corridor, and the boys were on one side of the screen and the girls on the other side, so we didn't see each other.
That would have been terrible if you'd seen each other.
Exams, the boys faced the stage in the big hall and the girls faced the gallery.
And with a big screen and separate.
Draft screens up the middle of the corridor. It was so stupid because we met them in the tram car.
Of course, yeah.
Many of the boys joined what was then called the OTC, the Officers Training Corps.
Yes.
That name was changed to Junior Training Corps because officers meant it was rather elitist, and the Junior Training Corps was to cover everybody. And it was very popular. We had drills on Monday and Friday, and I joined the band as a piper, and the band practice was on a Monday evening, and we did our normal corps drills on the Friday.
Yeah.
Captain Dixon, he was known as Captain Dixon, he taught chemistry, he was in charge of the corps, and Nick Colley and Billy Williams were his lieutenants. I think it was about 1941.
the Air Training Corps was established.
Yes.
And quite a few boys from the Corps who were wanting to go into the Air Force, they switched across to the Air Training Corps.
Yes.
I think Johnny Sinclair, who taught maths, and Mr. Shanks, who taught Latin, I think they were the officers from memory. Mr. Shanks went away, I think, to the Royal High School after, just about after that.
Were the training officers all teachers, or were there any professional military trainers who came in?
Most of the officers were teachers. We had a sergeant major, can't remember, McCormick was there to begin with, but he went away back to the army. I can't remember, it might be in Ross, there was somebody else. But with a regular, he had been a regular soldier who helped, took the drills.
Yes, yes.
And occasionally students from the university who were had military experience, they helped out. The target was to get your certificate A, which you got a wee red badge on your arm. You had to be able to do certain things. I don't know, because I was in the band, we never attempted that. But quite a few of the boys got their Cert A, as they talked about. I understand if you were at the university, you got Cert B, which was a shade higher.
Yes, yes.
And I can remember a fellow Johnson, who was ahead of us. He was at university. He actually ended up as the moderator of the Church of Scotland. I remember him coming and taking us for field day, field craft.
Yeah.
And he was quite interested. During the summer holidays, farm camps and forestry camps took place. Yeah. Now, I never went to these because I had got myself arranged a job in a farm in East Lothian, and I went down there for the summer holidays with another fellow from Harriet's, and that was it.
And that was seen as part of the war effort.
Yes, that was part of it. I think maybe about 80 boys would probably do what was the forestry camp.
Yes, yes.
I remember one of the early forestry camps was in Selkirk, and I don't know where the agricultural camps were, but I can remember some of the boys, Ralph Clark and Dougie Bennett, and some of these people going to the camp in Selkirk. After the summer holidays in 1941, the girls went back to George Square, and things in Collington Road began to get back to normal. Yeah. The swimming pond was opened. School dinners started again. We worked a full day. The pianos were still under the gallery, and some of the boys could, on a really wet day, they would entertain us with boogie. I can remember Carlo Biaggi and Jimmy Peaty, I think. They could play the piano, and now and again you got duets, and it was quite boogie woogie stuff.
Boogie woogies. Sounds great fun.
Now the area in front of the school, which was just purely grass, ornamental, but it was just grass, a piece of grass area, that was ploughed up during the war, and some of the pitches at Tipperlin, the junior pitches, they were also ploughed up, and they were planted in, the area in front of the school was planted in cabbages, and a bit at Tipperlin near the stand pitch, that was quite a big area, and that was planted in cabbages. Yes. And we took it, different classes we'd sent out to put them out, plant them, and later on to go around and squeeze caterpillars on the leaves.
Oh, yes.
My father and uncle, or Mr. Donald, Uncle Mac MacDonald, they were in charge of this cabbage planting.
Yeah.
Towards the end of 1943, there was a great shortage of coal miners. And the government decided that 2 in every 10 people waiting to be called up would be directed to the coal mines. Yes. And they were known as Bevan boys, after an Iron Bevan who was the Minister of Labour. Douglas Bennett and David Hall, they were both directed to the mines. Dougie Bennett was very annoyed because he'd set himself his mind on going to the Navy, but there you are, he ended up as a Bevan boy. A way of avoiding this direction was to volunteer for one of the services. And one afternoon in February 1944, we were in George Syme's chemistry class. Jimmy Henderson, Laurie Nisbet and myself took the tram. We said to Mr. Syme, we've got to go down for the medical in George Street. So we just upped and out the class and took the tram down to George Street, where we volunteered for the army. Now, Laurie Nisbet's father was a bank manager at that time in Fort William, which was Cameron Highlander country, I think.
Of course, yes.
So he volunteered for the Cameron Highlanders. And I'm not quite sure why Jimmy Henderson or myself volunteered for the Seaforths and not the Royal Scots, which was the local regiment.
Of course,
however,
yes,
both of us volunteered for the Seaforth Highlanders.
Yes.
In September we were called up to Aldershot and to a training battalion. This was a fairly new style of training. Instead of the 6-week basic training, which most people had, we were to get 6 months training, very intensive. The first 10 days were spent in the usual inoculations and vaccinations, but a great number of psychological tests and Mensa type puzzles and initiative tests, generally against the clock. That lasted about 10 days, and then we got started into our military training, which was the usual drill, a lot of weapons trainings, various types of machine guns, mortars, grenades and that sort of thing. We had a spell in the gas chamber, we learned the different types of gas, and we did route marches. We did a couple of small route marches wearing our gas masks and gas capes, which is very uncomfortable. About halfway through the course, we had to attend what they call the WOSBI, a War Office Selection Board. The purpose of these selection boards was to see if there was any suitable material, officer material. Now, Laurie Nisbet, he was selected as an officer. Jimmy Henderson was deferred for 6 months, and I was ignored. Wasn't selected anyway for anything. So I then volunteered for the Army Commandos and was accepted for that. Once we left Aldershot, I was posted to Wrexham, which was a holding centre for the commandos, and about 10 days we were assessed in what we had learned and what we knew about different guns and drills and stuff. And when I was there, I met Ian MacLean, who had been the school captain in 1940-41. I had quite a chat with him. That was very nice. And then I was posted up to Achnacarry, which was the basic centre for
very well known
commanders, and that was a very hard, intensive spell, lasted about 6 or 7 weeks. And I happened to be there when VE Day was announced, but it was just another day. We had to carry on with our training. We just got on with our training. It was one of the wettest places in Scotland. I understand it still one of the wettest places. We had something like 152 centimetres, that's about 1.5 metres of rain. If you weren't wet from rain overhead, the valley was about 6:30. If you weren't wet from rain overhead by 8 o'clock, you were certainly wet through going through burns or streams or something. However, that was a part of the training. Once I got my green beret, I was posted to 1 Commander Brigade, which was at that time stationed in Sussex, doing jungle training prior to going out to the Far East. And we were there when VJ Day was announced, and we were in Sussex. We got 4 days leave, and I went up to London, and in the crowd outside Buckingham Palace on the VJ evening, I bumped into Raymond DeMarco, who was a Watsonian and had been a temporary teacher when I was at school
Yes.
in the Modern Languages department.
Yes.
It was nice. The commandos, at the end of October that year, we had a brigade parade, a whole brigade paraded on Hove Cricket Ground. The purpose of this was to tell us that the that the commandos generally were being disbanded. The government had decided that there was no need for commandos anymore. That was later rescinded to a certain extent, and the Royal Marines were able to continue for a bit. However, when I was wandering about the parade, the cricket ground in Hove, Carlo Biaggi appeared from a lorry. And afterwards saluted each other. "Hello, Paddy, how are you getting on?" Now, I should have said earlier on that my father was nicknamed Paddy, and within days of starting school, other boys called me Paddy. And I was known as Paddy for that. But it's actually, Carlo jumped off the wagon.
Yes.
"How are you getting on, Paddy?" And we had a great blather. Very nice. Once the commands were disbanded, I was posted to the 9th Battalion of the Seaforth Highlanders. That was mainly made up of boys or young men who had started their national service and had just finished their basic training and were waiting to be posted to battalions. I went out with a draft in January to Germany, and we started off as guarding a prison camp full of suspected Nazis, and they were being interrogated to see if they were or were not Nazis. And then after that we moved down to Hanover and did guards round the post office, clothing departments and things like that. Yes. And one morning, early morning parade, I went out, and lo and behold, with a new officer, Second Lieutenant Jimmy Henderson. Now, he was very much the officer, and I was very much the corporal.
Oh, no. You had to salute him and everything, yes.
I played rugby for the battalion and also for the Highland Brigade.
Yes.
We moved from Germany down to Antwerp, and again we were doing guards, mainly the docks, and the train guards up to Italy.
Yes.
The Highland Division was being disbanded at that time. Large numbers of troops were being demobbed, and the Highland Division was broken up, and we were posted to other units. Now, some of the early tests I had done in Aldershot when I joined up began to show themselves, and as a result of what I had done earlier, I was transferred to the Royal Signals and was posted to a cipher troop. I did a course in cipher work, and that was very interesting. And I was posted to different parts of different units in Germany. And one of the units I went to, one corps, went to the room and blathered to 8 or 9 of us in the section. This chap said, "You sound Scottish." I said, "Yes, I am. Where did you come from?" I said, "Near Edinburgh." "Oh, yes. Where did you go to school?" I said, "Watson's." "Oh, so did I."
So did I. They're everywhere.
I said, What's your name?" I said, "MacLean." "No relation to Paddy MacLean, are you?" I said, "Yes, I'm his son." So he called me Paddy right away.
Yes.
He was John Smith, nice chap.
Yes.
Funnily enough, I met him many, many years later when I was working, and he was that time, I think, the secretary of the Inverness Envelope Company or something.
Oh, yes.
I'll now come to my Watsonian activities.
Yes.
I was demobbed at the end of 47, and in the spring of 48 I attended a meeting of the Junior Watsonian Club, and I was appointed secretary, a post I held for about 12 years. Now, we had 2 meetings in the winter term, and we had generally 2 teachers from the school came to the junior club, and we met in Maerside, No alcohol, of course, and just a social get-together, but the two teachers kept us informed of what was happening at the school.
Yes.
And in the summer term, we invited the boys who were leaving school to come to one of our meetings.
Yeah.
We had a game called Paddocks. It's a cross between cricket and rounders and God knows what else.
Yeah.
We played that for a wee while, and then we took them up the stairs and told them the benefits of being a Watsonian, and encouraged them to join the club,
Yes.
which many of them did. We started off with a burn supper in the pavilion. Again, no drink, but a very good burn supper. The president of the Watsonian, Frank Buffett, was there, and from there we progressed to a formal dinner, which was held in the Grosvenor Hotel, at that time run by 2 or 3 brothers who were all Watsonians, the Elliott brothers.
Yeah.
So we supported them, and we had a ball, well, we called it, initially it started off as the dance, held in what was a silver slipper, a sort of shady, run-down dance hall in Morningside. but we got better, and
You moved up in the world.
we moved to the music hall in George Street.
And called it a
both,
ball.
both events were well attended.
Yeah.
I joined the athletic club and ran as the second string in the mile and the half mile. And we had contests against the other FB clubs and various Harrier clubs.
Yes.
We had always a good contest with the school, and for some reason or other we always had a contest with Loreto School. Always held down at Loreto, I don't know why, but it was always a very enjoyable contest and a very closely fought contest.
Yes.
However, I joined the football club, that's playing rugby of course, and I played for the seconds, the thirds, the fourths, and once I passed 30 I played for the fifths for quite a number of years.
Yes.
We had great fun, and we didn't play as long as some of the other teams. Each half only lasted about 25 minutes,
Yes.
and very often we were first in the communal bath at my side,
yeah.
which meant we got clean water.
At least,
But it was mighty hot compared with the latterly. I joined the Watsonian Curling Club about 1958, I think it would be, and continued to curl until 2015.
Oh.
I became the assistant secretary to Jock Crearer, and I was the secretary of the curling club for about 9 or 10 years, I think. After I was secretary, I became the president of the curling club, and I was president of the Edinburgh Curling Club in 1987. And I still go to the Royal Club meetings and agitate and stir things up. Although it's more difficult now that I'm getting deaf, very deaf. I got a 50 years medal from the Royal Club 2 or 3 years ago for my 50 years membership of the club.
Yes.
After I stopped playing rugby, I kept up my association with Mireside by acting as a bagman and running the line on a Saturday afternoon, albeit wearing a kilt and Wellington boots.
Yes.
And then the language come to my work now, thanks.
Yes, of course.
As I say, I was demobbed in end of 47, and I got a job with Midlothian County Council in the Collectors and Assessors Department. About 1955, I think we got a new boss, and the department was split into 2, the Collectors and the Assessors Department. And I was kept in the Assessors Department as a technical assistant, and that was fine. I had a good safe job. However, we got a new boss about 1956, and he said to technical assistants, I think you should become charter surveyors because there's a change in the law coming on, and if you wanted to get anywhere in an assessor's department, you would require to be qualified. Well, none of us wanted to go anywhere else. We were quite happy where we were. However, we encouraged us to become charter surveyors, and 3 of us did. And we all qualified in 1962 as surveyors.
Yeah.
I stayed on in the department until I retired in 1985.
Yeah.
I was ordained as an elder in the Church of Scotland.
Yes.
Do you want this sort of information?
Yes, of course. Yes,
I was
yes.
ordained as an elder in the
yes.
Church of Scotland in 1954, and I was the session clerk of the St Nicholas MacLean Church for 16 years in Dalkeith. I played tennis until I was well into my 50s, and I enjoy gardening, and I'm very much involved in the local history group.
Yes.
I'm married to Jean. I've been married to Jean for almost 59 years. I have one daughter and 3 grandchildren.
Yes.
And I think that's about all there. And
well, thank you. That's fascinating. I mean, what a long and fulfilled and interesting life you've had, and very active all the time.
And I admire the way the school has gone.
Yes.
Kept right up to date with what's happening. The teachers are very encouraging, and they do all sorts of things for the pupils. And the pupils have great opportunities, and I'm sure most of them take the opportunities. It's great to read the magazine and see what the boys and girls are doing, where they're travelling and how they're doing.
Yes.
And I think that's all I can say.
Yeah.
If that's...
Oh no, that's wonderful. Thank you very much for all of that.
Okay.
So thank you.